Sexuality. The enemy is within. Below. When the word enlightenment is encountered for the first time, it is, as a rule, an indecent word. At some time or other, someone gets the idea that we are now old enough to know about it. Life comes from fucking. There you have it. One can approach the topic innocuously, starting with the bee and the flower, then with cat and tomcat, cow and bull, finally with daddy and mummy, who, in doing it, love each other quite tenderly. No one says a word about it before. No one says a word about it afterwards. In between, a gap. Enlightenment. Wherever things are so intensely hidden, there under the covers it becomes burningly naked. Naked. It's one of those words that are still sexually unsettled. We think of the atmosphere in a brothel, of skin and secrets. A naked fact, in some way, always resembles an undressed woman. What is naked is rare, desired, magnetic. It remains an exception, a utopia. The old sexual economy rested on the game of concealing, revealing, refusing, enticing. It creates a deficiency, and in doing so, produced something valuable. The history of sexual relations, therefore, probably consists for the lesser part in the history of eroticism. The larger part consists in the history of the war between the sexes. For this reason, too, only the smaller part of concealment arises from the erotic game. The greater part comes from coercion, struggle, and oppression. We cannot speak realistically of sexuality without treating animosities and polemics. In a society like ours, the attraction between the sexes seems to be linked from the start with power struggles between one's own and the alien, with duels over top and bottom, with exchanges of lust for security, with compromises between fear and surrender. In the meantime, the word relationship has become almost synonymous with conflict. The black empiricism of sexuality observes its objects through the keyhole, lustful, fearful, apprehensive, because erotic facts were totally screened off before the so-called sexual revolution. Like dangers and secrets, every access to them, whether one liked it or not, had a conflictual character. Anyone seeking sexual experience found it to be almost like a military adventure. It is no accident that our erotic tradition uses an abundance of martial metaphors: attack, defence, siege, storm, victory, subjugation, giving over the key to the fortress, etc. The sexual body was thus in no way a simple, straightforward matter. Because it has been made so difficult for the sexual body to conceive of itself as an opportunity and as happiness, it became instead a curse and a calamity. The sexual drive, dammed up in its own skin, became an agonising thorn in the side. This is how the older sexual economy handed it down, right up to the time of our puberty. In fact, puberty was actually the time when acquaintance with the misfortune of having this drive began. Here it helped little to become enlightened, especially not according to the formula, the bad news in brief. To be enlightened meant to have become cognizant of the essentials of a new inner enemy. To learn how to cope with its urges was the strategically pressing task. Sexuality appeared from this perspective as a vast danger zone. It was on the sexual level that you could be overtaken by every possible misfortune. The catastrophe of unwanted pregnancies, the disgrace of inopportune seduction, the misery of repugnant infections that consumed you for the rest of your life, the humiliation through a premature, lonely drive without prospect, the risk of discovering a monster within oneself that harboured homosexual or perverse tendencies in its bowels, to say nothing of the degradation of prostitution and so on and so on. These risks became threateningly present with the beginning of sexual maturity. It's understandable that the thought of contraception initially referred not to conception, but to sexual contact, erotic experience per se. apart from a few liberal, clever tricks that has been the Catholic position to the present day, contraception through abstinence. The inexperienced, it was thought, can scarcely ever be mature enough to deal with the sexual danger. Only marriage offers the necessary protection by directing sexuality, together with all its risks, into a secure channel. In it, the forbidden becomes allowed, disgrace becomes duty, sin necessity, the danger of conception, the joy of parenthood, etc. Whether this regime is fully passed is not the question. Then, as now in our civilization, sexuality is seen through a primarily pornographic visor, as if there were still something to spy out, to uncover, and to bring over to one's own side. Nakedness becomes the symbol for the highest good. Our image world crawls with naked bodies that build up flourishing worlds of stimuli for voyeurism, and the brain sensuality of the capitalist wish society. The remote but already visible naked body remains in the world where we have contact without touching each other, the epitome of the really desirable. Because the commodity society can only function on the basis of disembodiment, its members are consumed by a hunger for images of the body, including one's own body image. Often one has the impression that the images are already among themselves, in search of a complementing counter-image. Only in marginal groups and in parts of the intelligentsia does a type of people still live who know that the images are different from themselves, a knowledge not infrequently paid for with disorders, depressions, and who am I neuroses. Would the addiction to images and the black sexual empiricism not cease at one stroke, as soon as the concealments were removed and the prevention of sexual experience was stopped once and for all? Prohibition and concealment are really the driving forces of mechanisms of wishing that continually strive from the given to the other. Nudism and promiscuity, therefore, both have a subversive component that is worthy of investigation. They destroy the backdrops among which the wishes move when they make their appearance. Where everybody disarms from the start, unclothes, and becomes accessible, the wish-producing fantasies of prohibition, darkness, and remote goals vanish. Those who have experienced such evaporation sense, if not freedom, then nonetheless an increase in possibilities among which freedom can choose. By tracking down their wish functions, they can recognize themselves in the role of the producer of their wishes. It is not the objects that are responsible for the desire directed at them, but rather wishing paints the objects with its longings, as if the objects were not themselves, but simultaneously the remote other that inflames the wishes.